Greetings to the anointed. Unless the audience notices first, of course. A magician never divulges his secrets. And that's precisely what just took place. You understood. You were able to see through the smoke, the mirrors, and the deceptive tactics they have been using to manipulate the story. They are now enraged. You see, manipulators rely on deceit. They don't merely lie. Their power is an illusion that only works if you believe in it. It is not genuine. Their whole charade falls apart the instant you stop playing along. And believe me, they detest that moment over anything else. A little psychological trivia for you. Studies reveal that manipulators' stress levels rise, seemingly due to physical withdrawal, when they are no longer in control of the person they formerly controlled. They were addicted to their mind games, not simply a habit. They're spiraling now that you're not feeding them. They're acting out, exaggerating, and doing everything to bring you back in because they're desperate to retake control, not because they care or suddenly understand. It's similar to a magician realizing that the audience has suddenly seen the wires supporting him. There is just a desperate performance attempting to make you believe that you did not see what you just seen. There is no more trick or illusion. But you know what? You did. They are unable to cope with the strain because of this. First of all, their psychological stranglehold on you has been broken. Control is the most important factor for mind game players. Not just any control, but a monopoly on your mind. They seek to control how you think, behave, and see the world. Not try to change you. Every deception, every perverted reality, every guilt trip, all of them are intended to control your thoughts. However, that monopoly disintegrates the moment you become aware of their strategy. They aren't designed to withstand that type of loss, let me tell you, because power was more important to them than just playing tricks on you. The ability to keep you wondering while they're pulling the strings. The ability to make you feel bad for pointing out their inconsistencies. The ability to maintain control at all times, even when they are completely mistaken. You turn into an issue when you eventually see through it. They never expected you to challenge them. Not because you're being tough. Their whole system of control was based on the presumption that you would always agree with their interpretation of reality. Therefore, people fear rather than merely becoming angry when you stop playing along. The actual breakdown starts at that point. They lash out, gaslight more aggressively, and act as if their lives rely on playing the victim. Not because they're upset, but rather because they're frantically attempting to regain control. The fact that you've escaped is too much for them to take. The harsh reality is that they never really had authority over you. You had to give them what they had. Illusion, emotional manipulation, and your willingness to believe them were the foundations of their whole psychological monopoly. They are reduced to their tantrums and desperation now that you can see properly. Their mind tricks are useless without your cooperation, which is why they are so angry. Number 2, you stopped questioning because their reality feeds off of it. Manipulators create uncertainty in addition to lying to you. Their whole tactic is to make you doubt yourself so much that you become dependent on them to tell you the truth. Confusion is the goal of every tiny mind trick they do, including gaslighting, assigning blame, and falsifying information. Confusion is also their best tool, as it allows them to manipulate your beliefs when you don't trust your own judgment. But everything changes the instant you quit questioning yourself. All of a sudden, they lose control of the narrative. You've begun to see the inconsistencies, the deceit, and the way they conveniently fabricate events to appear innocent. They're scared that you're not doubting yourself anymore, because their effect disintegrates the moment you have complete faith in your own perspective. The panic starts at this point, not because they care, but because their whole feeling of power rests on keeping you in the dark. They will stop at nothing to drag you back into that mental haze. Whether it's gaslighting you further, playing the victim, or attempting to guilt trip you into submission. When you respond, "No, I see exactly what's happening," they lose control. So they require you to be in that place where you're always asking yourself, am I overreacting? Am I the problem? The unvarnished truth is that their world only existed because you questioned your own. Only by persuading you to doubt your intuition did the mind games succeed. You're thinking clearly now, however. Their actions are visible to you in real time. You're just rejecting their warped reasoning, not engaging in an argument. They are unable to manage it, as they have no power over you if you don't question yourself. Thirdly, without your emotional commitment, they have no power. Instead of really wanting you, manipulators want your time, energy, responses, and emotional involvement. They are fed by it. Every dispute, guilt trip, and perverted discussion is intended to keep you interested and playing their game, because they still have influence over you as long as you're responding. They begin to disintegrate as soon as you cease providing them with it. You've become emotionally distant from them. Not simply that you're ignoring them. You're no longer questioning yourself, examining their remarks, or attempting to reconcile their inconsistencies. Now that you've off the power, they're in a panic. At that point, the panic begins. In an attempt to agitate you, they may intensify their behavior, behave as if they are the victim out of the blue, make dramatic allegations, or have larger tantrums, because they are aware that they still have some degree of influence if they can make you respond, care, or debate back. However, they begin to lose their hold completely when you don't participate and don't fall for the trap. What truly irritates them is that your tranquility is their worst fear. When you were emotional, perplexed, or always striving to prove yourself, they flourished. However, you no longer act out the part they gave you. You're simply done. You're not upset or wounded. And nothing enrages a manipulator more than when they realize they can no longer access your emotions, because that's when they realize they have nothing left without your emotional involvement. Write Amen for angelic protection and contribute with a super thank you up to $20. Fourth, you turned into the mirror from which they are unable to move. Manipulators flee from themselves in order to live. All of their lies, games of blame, and destructive patterns are intended to divert attention from the reality of who they really are. They don't want to confront their shortcomings, their fears, or the harm they have inflicted. Thus, they project, which is the next best thing they can do. They fabricate a story, project their worst qualities onto others, and persuade themselves that someone else is always the issue. However, you then appear, and you notice them. Nor the meticulously crafted version, nor the deceptive character they use to exert control over others. The truth is visible to you. Even worse, the illusion no longer fools you. The actual breakdown starts at this point. They have to confront themselves, which is a horrible thing that occurs the moment you stop taking in their projections and refuse to bear the consequences of their falsehoods. And it is too much for them to bear. You turned into the mirror they've avoided all their lives. And not just any mirror. One that is impervious to manipulation, distortion, and breakage. They no longer regard you as a victim, a scapegoat, or someone they can manipulate to fit their own narrative. They see their own darkness, poisonous habits, and anxieties gazing back at them. They also detest it. They lash out more forcefully than before because of this. They attempt to undermine you, paint you as a villain, or get you to doubt yourself once again because of this. Because they won't have to confront the reality if they can regain power over you. However, they know in their hearts that they have already lost, since once the illusion is broken, it cannot be restored. Number 5. They now see their error. They thought your generosity was weakness. Misjudging others is a breeding ground for manipulators. They look for traits like compassion, patience, and empathy that they may take advantage of and interpret them as weakness. They believed they had discovered the ideal target when they first met you. Someone who would put up with their foolishness, forgive them without conditions, and continue to give, even when they were at their very last. And you did for a while. You believed in giving others the benefit of the doubt, not because you were weak. You thought they were well-meaning. You believed that people would ultimately respect and value you if you were polite, understanding, and patient enough. Then you saw the pattern, the manipulation, the one-sidedness, and the way they kept taking without ever giving anything back. Something changed inside of you at that point. You established a limit. No, you said. You demanded responsibility from them instead of continuing to excuse their actions. They recognized their deadly error at that point. You were never weak or foolish. You were only giving them a chance. You weren't being dominated, and that opportunity is now lost. They are enraged by this understanding because it makes them face an unexpected reality. They never had any control over you. You were giving them space in your life, but you revoked it as soon as they showed they weren't deserving. They believed they had you under control, but you were the only one who allowed them to get away with their deception. That door is now closed. In reality, the compassion they perceived for weakness was a strength they were unable to understand. And now, all they have left is the harsh reality that they lost you because you were strong enough to go, not because you were weak. Sixth, you demonstrated that their strategy isn't as ingenious as they first believed. The delusion of superiority is what manipulators thrive on. Playing chess all the time while everyone else is playing checkers, they consider themselves strategic geniuses. They saw themselves as the lords of the puppets, quietly manipulating threads and staying one step ahead. They flourish because they think they're smarter than everyone else. They didn't anticipate this fact, though. Their game wasn't that smart. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't sophisticated. And it most surely wasn't unique. Repeated often, albeit with various victims, it was the same stale pattern. Once you see the pattern, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, playing the victim, word-bending, and misunderstanding are all predictable. And that's where they went wrong. You wouldn't notice, they thought. They believed that you couldn't decipher their mind tricks because they were too complex, nuanced, and multi-layered. However, you did. You saw the contradictions, the inconsistencies, and the way they manipulated every circumstance to suit their own interests. The act was exposed by you, and it broke them when you stopped responding, stopped interacting, and stopped falling for the same old cliches. Their ego was based on the idea that they were the most intelligent person in the room, and that they were a skilled manipulator who could change reality to suit their needs. However, you've now shown them to be predictable, uncreative, and not quite as intelligent as they once believed. That's a profound discovery. Being caught is one thing, but realizing that the game you believed gave you power was never that great in the first place is quite another. Your emotional engagement, your bewilderment, and your ignorance were the foundation of their whole feeling of superiority. They have nothing left now that you can see through them. And that's what they're really incapable of. Your realization that their brilliance was really a phony mirage is more significant than simply refusing to play their game any longer. Write Amen to feel the peace of the angels and show your support with a super thank you up to $20. Seventh, you interrupted the pattern. They are hooked to the drama. Some individuals rely on drama. They don't merely like it. They get energy, a feeling of control, and a sense of relevance from it. They see confrontation as a lifeline rather than an issue. They are well planned. The arguments, guilt trips, and emotional ups and downs are not coincidences, because they feel empty without them. For this reason, even when everything is going well, manipulators cause trouble. They find peace unpleasant because it makes them sit with themselves, and they secretly despise what they see. Instead of confronting their own fears, they would prefer to create a catastrophe. Their escape is drama. It allows individuals to cast their dysfunction onto someone else and diverts their attention from their inner turmoil. And you were the ideal source for them for a time. You were emotionally engaged, defended yourself, and responded. And you fueled their addiction each time. You believed the fights were about settling things, not because you wanted to. They weren't. Control, keeping you interested, emotionally committed, and hooked, was always the aim, not resolution. Then you stopped, however. You refused to join because you recognized the cycle for what it was. No more defending your limits. No more establishing your position. And no more elaborating on yourself. Just peace, quiet, and indifference. At that point, the withdrawal process begins. They get into a panic. They are more provocative. They use accusations, taunts, and guilt-tripping to get your attention. Not because they're offended, but rather because they require your response, much as an addict wants a drug. They lose their hold without it. They are forced to dwell in the identical vacuum they were fleeing from without it. You were more than just a person to them. You were their emotional source, which is why they are so anxious to get you back in. You've also turned off the faucet. Eighthly, they worry that other people will also notice. In addition to controlling people, manipulators also control stories. They have the ability to manipulate everyone around them by creating an image that gives them power, not only by tricking you. They may keep playing the victim, manipulating, and distorting reality to suit their interests as long as others accept their version of events. However, you later exposed it, which is problematic, because what would stop others from doing the same if you were able to find them out? It was not intended for you to awaken. It was not intended for you to make the connections. Most significantly, you were not allowed to speak. For this reason, they enter damage control mode as soon as they recognize that you are beyond their control. They cannot afford to be questioned by others as well. So, they attack first, as manipulators usually do. They launch the campaign of smears. They portray you as irrational, unstable, or resentful. They distort the facts so that people would already have grounds to disbelieve you if you ever speak out. This is about defending their game, not about hurting their emotions. Before you can expose them, they must make sure you are discredited, because once others begin to see through them, the entire house of cards falls apart. They panic because of this. It's not just about losing you. It's also about losing the facade they put so much effort into maintaining. They depend on secrecy, confusing individuals, and ensuring that no one solves the riddle. However, the fact that you now possess the missing component frightens them, because if one individual awakens, others will follow suit in due time. Furthermore, there is no halting the truth once it begins to spread. To share the love of the angels, write Amen and contribute up to $20 with a super thank you. Number 9. Your quiet was always the key to their power. Silence, especially yours, is a breeding ground for manipulators. Knowing that they may function unchecked as long as you remain silent and repress your ideas, doubts, and feelings, they pull threads and weave webs in the background. They take advantage of your reluctance to speak out, your fear of confrontation, and your desire to avoid upsetting anybody. Additionally, they maintain their position of power by keeping you quiet as long as you remain in yours. However, everything changes as soon as you speak out and end that quiet. They no longer had control over that quiet, which was essential to their game's operation. Their basis is destroyed when you reveal their strategies, and don't remain silent while they continue to manipulate you. They are no longer able to play in the dark. It takes just a moment to eliminate their authority, which was based on your silence. They saw you as an integral component of their whole delusion, not simply a passive target. They wanted you to remain silent, to have self-doubt, and to let their words unquestionably influence your reality. Their protection was your silence, and the illusion disintegrates when you cease acting out that part. Since there is no turning back once you disclose their plan, they detest being exposed. Everyone can see their world of deceit, control, and manipulation. They no longer have the ability to change your mind or cause you to doubt yourself. And that's the biggest loss for them. In actuality, their power never existed. It relied on your passivity, your quiet, and your reluctance to speak out. Now that it's gone, they have no protection. The 10th is that you reclaimed your viewpoint, even if they believe they possessed it. The type of control that not only controls your behavior, but also shapes your whole perspective, is the most pernicious. The goal of manipulators is to take control of your perspective of reality, not just your obedience. They give you their interpretation of reality, distort your perception of yourself, and cause you to doubt all of your preconceived notions. They have authority over you when they dictate your perspective. Everything changes, however, once you get over it and take back your own perspective. This involves reprogramming your reality, rather than only opposing them. You escape their hold when you cease putting your ideas through their prism and regain your ability to see clearly. You fully change the way you see the world and yourself, not merely cease believing their falsehoods. And that change, it cannot be undone. It is impossible to avoid seeing the truth. The fact that they never really had authority over you in the first place is what frightens them. All they had was influence. They lived on having you question your judgment, mistrust your gut feelings, and second-guess every choice you made. However, the instant you regain your perspective, you reveal the deception that they ever had power. The thing that most worries manipulators is that you're breaking their rules when you take back your own viewpoint. You see them for what they are, someone who shaped your perception of the world to maintain your conformity. When you overcome that, you deprive them of their authority over you, and their power starts to wane. They are unable to accept that their most useful instrument was just smoke and mirrors and was never as strong as they believed. Type Amen to embrace the angel's blessings. Show your support by giving super thanks up to $20. 11th, they are incapable of surviving without a scapegoat. Blame is what toxic people feed on. They don't want to own up to their faults or accept accountability for their own behavior. To avoid facing the truth about themselves, they seek a scapegoat, someone to shoulder their troubles, and someone to take on their rage and aggravation. They are forced to face something they cannot handle. They are the issue. This happens the instant you stop playing that part, when you stop putting up with their mistreatment, cleaning up their mess, or absorbing their negativity. And that insight? For them, it's scary.